right, are we ready to get started? Yeah. Sweet. So my name is Sky, and Will is going to be out here in just a second. We are from a group called Nature's Educators. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization all the way from Colorado, so we're very excited to come out and see you guys. Now the birds we're going to show you guys today are not animals that you could keep as a pet. And so we actually hold a lot of different licenses in order to show you our special friends. We're licensed by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, United States Department of Agriculture, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, because that's our home state, and we did pick up a Pennsylvania Game and Fish license as well to be able to bring our birds to you. Now my only rules for you guys is don't see any small children, but if there's any small children, we don't want them to run around in the front or scare the birds. We don't want them to get hurt or our birds to get hurt. And for the bird that walks through the audience, please do not reach out and try and touch her. Sound like a plan? You'd be surprised if people do. Now, you guys are here to see raptors, right? Awesome. So these are special birds of prey that have different tools and adaptations on their bodies. These birds all have sharp, powerful talons to catch their prey and a nice curved beak to be able to eat their prey. We like to call those their forks and their knives. Now, all of these birds have absolutely amazing eyesight. Their vision is actually about 10 to 12 times better than ours. So if we had eyes like a hawk or a falcon, we would be able to read the rules on the haunted dungeon way behind us, which is pretty incredible. I know you guys are looking, I can barely even realize there was rules. I was trying to find a frame of reference first weekend. But some of these guys also have an amazing sense of hearing, and some, but very, very few, have an excellent sense of smell. Have you guys ever heard the tale that you should never touch a baby bird because it's going to get human scent on it and the mom can reject the baby? How many of you heard that? Like all of us, right? It's actually a really bad wives' tale. Most birds actually do not have a sense of smell at all. And so if you can't smell anything, there is no human scent to reject. For those that do have a sense of smell, they haven't come up and smelled people's hands and said, oh, that's what people smell like, let's go tell everyone else, right? In reality, if you do find a baby bird that needs to be put back into a nest, the first thing you should do is call a wildlife rehab group, like Wild Bird Recovery around the corner. See if that bird even needs help in the first place, because often fledglings are learning to fly. If you put that fledgling back in the nest, what's going to happen?
It flies back down.
They're going to jump right back down, right? I think that's where the wives' tale kind of started. It's hard to say, it's a really old tale, but always reach out to a wildlife professional before interacting with wildlife to see if that animal even needs help in the first place. Now, how many of you guys have visited Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, or farther south from there? Okay, a few of you guys. You guys may recognize this first bird that we have for you guys. So let's see what you guys think about him as he comes out. Oh, he's being a good boy. You guys recognize this guy? What might he be? I know you know. What is it? Yeah. A Harris hawk. Good job. This is our Harris hawk. Now this bird's name is Zeus, and he's about 15 years old. He was actually originally hatched for the sport of falconry. And falconry is actually the oldest sport in the world and was done during the Renaissance times. So the king and queen would have a royal falconer and they would fly the birds and maybe bring home food for the court, things like that. After a few years of doing his job as a falconry bird, this guy was gifted to us to be a teaching bird, which he does a really great job. Now, as I mentioned, Harris hawks live in the desert. So, if you were to live in the desert, what would be some of the hardest things to find? Just shout it out. Water and food. Good job. Water and food are both very difficult things to find. So, thankfully for most predators, they actually get almost all of their water from their food in the first place. Now, as far as food goes, this guy is what we call an opportunistic predator. Anything that this guy thinks he can catch, he's going to go ahead and try and catch it. Whether that be a frog, toad, cricket, lizards, snakes, or mice and rats and things like rabbits and jackrabbits. Jackrabbits are huge. They weigh about 12 pounds, and they're about this long, they're about this tall, plus their ears, and they can run about 45 miles an hour. How much do you guys think that this guy weighs?
2 pounds.
2 pounds is actually really, really close. This guy weighs 1.5 pounds. So if he tried to take down that large rabbit by himself, he could potentially get hurt. So what makes the Harris hawk incredibly unique is that these birds actually hunt together in a pack. Average pack size is 3 to 5 individuals, and they work together to set up ambush hunts. What they actually will do is they'll send the youngest, least experienced bird to scare prey out from wherever it may be hiding, while the older, more experienced birds are set up ready to ambush their prey. So they're super smart and able to coordinate those attacks. Now something else, because these birds are social species, some of you may hear that he's been making some different vocalizations. They do have a wide variety of vocalizations they use to communicate, but they also have, currently, 16 recognized tail signals that they'll use to communicate to each other silently in the fields. That way they don't give their position away when they're out hunting those rabbits and things like that. So I think that's really cool, their communication level that these birds have. Their nicknames are the wolves of the sky because of that social pack dynamic that these birds have. Now very often when we have our hawk out, people will confuse this bird for a falcon. So we're going to give you guys a few tips to tell the difference between a hawk and a falcon. When you look at this bird, does he look really serious? Kind of like he's glaring at you guys? Yeah, that's a hawk and an eagle thing. These birds have a built-in bone ridge over their eyes that we call the supraorbital ridge. It helps to block the sun from his eyes, acting just like a hat, so he can look down at his prey and not be blinded by the sun. Notice most of the prey animals that he's hunting are things on the ground. He also has big, broad wings for soaring to help him save energy as he flies around. And hawks have short, stubby, but extremely powerful toes to be able to kill their prey by crushing with their feet. Now, if you were to see a falcon in comparison, we like to say that falcons are baseball players. They have dark stripes under their eyes that help to absorb the sunlight as they're flying around because they're actually hunting different prey. Falcons specialize in hunting other birds. So that dark stripe helps if you're chasing a bird through the air. You may look right at the sun where a hat no longer helps, but those dark marks do instead. Sports players actually got the idea for eye black from falcons and cheetahs. Falcons also have narrow pointed wings that help them to be extremely fast as they fly, and because they're hunting other birds, they have really long toes that help to reach through the feathers of the birds they're hunting so they can actually grab them. The best comparison I have is if you think of trying to go and grab a chicken, with one hand you're just going to get a bunch of feathers. So if you want to pick that chicken up, you have to get to the body of the bird instead. So that's why falcons have really long toes. Pretty cool, huh? Do you guys have any questions about our Harris hawk or hawks and falcons in general? Okay, pretty quiet crew, you never know. All right. Now this next bird that we have for you guys is one of my favorites to talk about. This is an incredibly common bird that I can guarantee every single person in this audience has seen before, even if you have no idea that you've seen them before. So let's see what you guys think about this wonderful guy as he comes out in just a second. He's a very noisy friend. You can actually hear him already. Good job. All right, does anyone recognize this guy? What is he? A red-tailed hawk. Good job. As I said, he's very, very well known. This bird's name is Arrow, and he's about 2 years old. He has a very weird story that may have happened before, but I've never heard of another ambassador having a story, but I'm sure it's happened before. This bird, his parents, built a nest on a power plant in an unsafe location. Wildlife officers got permission to try and move the nest over just a little bit so it would hopefully be safer for the young when they hatch. However, the parents abandoned the nest, which is not typical. And so, wildlife officers then got permission to take the eggs to a licensed wildlife rehabber. When they did that, this guy was the only egg that hatched out of that clutch of eggs. Having no siblings, and they didn't have a foster parent either, this bird became what we call a human imprint. He had nobody to teach him how to be a hawk, so he associates with people instead, making him non-releasable. Now, with red tails, I mentioned they're the most common hawk in North America. You can find them from the East Coast to the West Coast, from Canada all the way down to Central America. So, being incredibly common, this bird is found in literally any habitat you could think of. He could be in your backyard hunting things like rabbits and mice and rats. Or maybe he's in the forest here in Pennsylvania going after squirrels, possums, chipmunks. There's been a chipmunk teasing this guy today. Or, I mentioned we're from Colorado. Out there we have prairie dogs and snakes. He's a very good snake hunter. And in our area, this is one of the only recognized predators of the rattlesnake. So, wherever he lives, he's going to hunt anything he thinks he can catch. Now, along with that, something that I find amazing about these birds is their coloration. There's actually 14 recognized colorations and subspecies. I think you got it all, buddy. He's looking for crumbs. And so, depending on where you live, they're going to look a little bit different. If you guys saw the red tail that's over by Wild Bird Recovery, Ash, he's actually much darker coloration than Arrow here. And so, you guys have eastern red-tailed hawks here. This guy is a western red-tail. And you can have super, super dark and super light and everything in between. So, making them one of the hardest to identify despite being as common as they are. Now, one of my favorite things too with these birds, it's a really good trivia fact for any of you guys that are out there playing trivia, is that this is the voice actor for bald eagles everywhere. Anytime you guys see a movie or a commercial and a beautiful bald eagle flies across the screen, you can hear that sound. That's this bird. As beautiful as bald eagles are and majestic as they may be, their sound isn't quite as majestic. I like to describe them as sea chickens. They kind of go, which is a silly kind of sound, right? So, movie makers used the sound of the red-tailed hawk instead. But they actually do the same thing with owls as well. I love when they show a barn owl, whose nickname is the banshee owl because they scream. It's not a pleasant sound, I promise you. But you're always going to hear, woo, 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 right? That's actually the great horned owl. So, that is the sound they use for all owls in movies when you're listening to that. So, a little fun trivia for you guys, huh? You guys have any questions about Mr. Arrow here? Yeah?
Are you able to make him call?
No, he does it when he wants to. So the sound he typically makes is actually the food begging call that a red-tail would make when they're in the nest as a baby. Human imprinted birds make that sound their entire lives. They are not taught by their parents when to make different sounds, and so the only time we hear him make his aggressive sound is if he's got food and he thinks somebody else nearby may be trying to take his food. But that's the only time I've ever heard him make that call. 90% of the time is me hearing that really obnoxious screaming sound that's really, people think it's great until you listen to it 24/7. I promise you it's the same thing with the owls. The owls make a weird squawking sound, which is their baby begging call, and they do it non-stop as human imprinted birds. All right. Now, this next bird, I just want to reiterate, since we've had a lot of people join the show, if you guys have small kiddos, things like that, please make sure they're not running around and chasing this next bird as she comes around through the audience. And remember, please don't touch her as well. Sound good? Awesome. This next bird is found on every single continent except for Antarctica. And so, let's see if any of you recognize her as she comes out. All right, you guys have an idea? What might this one be? Peregrine falcon, good job. This is our peregrine falcon. Her name is Penny, and we'll talk about her story and her obvious thing here in a second. However, peregrines, I mentioned falcons are hunting other birds. The peregrine's main bird that they're hunting is usually things like ducks or pigeons, earning them the nickname duck hawk for good reason. They're not actually a hawk, as we talked about before, but they have often nicknames for falcons that require hawk in the name, like pigeon hawk is a little merlin, the sparrow hawk is a little kestrel, and the duck hawk is a peregrine falcon. Now these guys are the ones that are known to dive at their prey, going over 200 miles an hour to catch their prey. But other falcons, like the gyrfalcon or the prairie falcon, out where we live, the prairie lives in the prairies, they're actually pursuit chasers. So they're often out chasing their birds in a nice pursuit flight. Now, have you guys noticed something wrong with Miss Penny here? What's wrong with her? Her
right wing is short.
She likes to kind of show it off. And as she comes around, also remember to look at those dark stripes, that pointed wing that she has, and her long toes. But Miss Penny here, we do not know what happened to her. She was actually dropped off at a facility with her wingtip already missing. So we have no idea what happened. But over 70% of birds who come into facilities like ours that we do know the story, why they have a wing injury or an eye injury, something like that, is because of vehicle collisions. So while we all know not to throw trash or plastic out of the car, things like apple cores, banana peels, and burger buns are often seen as acceptable because they're biodegradable. However, that doesn't biodegrade overnight. That takes weeks. That fungus and bacteria takes time, right? In those weeks, you're going to attract mice and rats, maybe possum and deer to the side of the road. And when those animals are there, the mice and rats are going to attract your hawks and owls and other predators. There could be a bird that a falcon would be going after. And those things that end up as roadkill often attract your scavengers, both mammal and bird alike. So it has been proven, if we keep all of our trash in our car, including the food, we can actually help reduce how often animals in general are injured. Now, number two, with the peregrine, I always actually talk about two different things with this one. One side of it is the #1 killer of owls across the globe, but the other side of it is why this bird almost went extinct in the 1970s, is pesticides in general. We'll talk about the two in here a sec. For the peregrine falcon, it was a really bad chemical called DDT. Did a good job of getting rid of the bugs, but as it went up the environment, up the ecosystem, it affected our bald eagles and our peregrine falcons, causing them to not be able to lay proper eggs, where there were no new birds coming into the environment. It's thanks to captive breeding efforts that these birds are now more than 100% recovered. But if we can continue to use different insects and pesticides like that, other birds that eat insects, like the smaller guys, like the American pastoral falcon, they're going to not have as much food to eat if we're getting rid of the bugs, and it has those negative effects on the environment. But the one that affects owls is another pesticide. You guys know what that one might be?
Strychnine.
Rodenticide.
Rodenticide, mouse and rat poison. They're also pests, right? When we use mouse and rat poison, it doesn't work the way we think it does. At minimum, it is 5 to 7 days before that poison takes effect, and that's 5 to 7 days someone else can eat a poison rodent. And it's not just the owls or the hawks, it's actually been seen up to the size of deer and mountain lions. So it's going up the food chain and not affecting what we want. So please stop using that stuff, but also research the alternatives. I don't have one right answer for you guys, but right now really popular on the market is sticky traps. All I can say is imagine being the animal in that sticky trap, right? So do the best you can and research that kind of stuff. The last big one can be hard to hear sometimes, but is important to talk about as well, is where do house cats belong?
In the house.
That's a very sparse response today, but yes, in the house. The outdoor house cats we allow to roam free here in the United States kill over 2 billion birds a year every single year. Across the globe, they are responsible for over 60 species going extinct. But as a cat lover, also what happens if your cat gets hit by a car, eats that poison rodent, is intentionally hurt by your neighbor, or gets a disease from the wildlife. Mice and rats carry hantavirus, that's why we don't like them, right? Rabbits carry tularemia, and in Colorado, we actually had the first cases of cats contracting avian flu virus. So there's a lot of stuff your cat's could get into, and we can actually more than double their expected lifespans by either building them a catio, harness training them, or keeping them indoors. So what do you guys think? Are those 3 easy things that you guys could do to help wildlife?
Yes.
Awesome. Do you guys have any questions about our peregrine falcon? Okay. It's hard to scour the audience a little bit. Now the last bird I have for you guys is one of my personal favorites to teach about. This bird is so incredibly misunderstood, mostly because of media and things like that. But they're often associated with Halloween. They're incredibly intelligent birds, and they're incredibly social as well. So let's see what you guys think about this wonderful little guy as he comes out. Will likes to keep us in suspense sometimes. It's bugging me. Here? Okay. I'm ready. There he is. Okay. All right, what do we have here?
Sashimi.
A turkey vulture. Sashimi. Those of you guys who met him earlier or saw him on TV, this is indeed Sashimi, the turkey vulture. He has a really sad story. This bird was found as a hatchling in a cardboard box taped shut in a parking garage, which is not where you should find a baby vulture, right? They don't tape the box shut themselves. It is very likely that whoever picked up this bird and put him in that box in the first place was unfortunately trying to keep him as a pet, which is federally illegal. Maybe, once they realized that that was illegal, rather than doing the right thing and taking that bird to a rehabber, again, if you guys find wildlife, reach out to a group like Wild Bird Recovery, rather than doing that, they decided to throw this bird away instead. So thankfully he was found, and he gets to live the rest of his life with us. He's way too friendly with people, so he's also a human imprint. He sees humans as his flock, not other birds, which is not how a bird should be, right? Now, very often, vultures get a bad rap simply because they're eating things that are dead. However, that's a very, very important job. On that dead stuff is often different diseases that we were just talking about, right? Now, his stomach acid is so strong that it's basically battery acid. So, whenever he eats the different diseases, he actually removes it entirely from the environment. He's able to eat things like anthrax, botulism. We're doing work here, buddy. We'll talk about that here in a second. He loves to do that. We'll talk about that. But anthrax, botulism, E. coli, salmonella, and my favorite to talk about, which is rabies. Rabies is actually a mammal-specific disease, so only mammals can get it. So when a bird like a vulture eats it, they actually remove it entirely from the environment. Now, unfortunately, worldwide, vultures are not necessarily doing great. Places like India lost more than 90% of their vulture population, and not only did they see diseases increase in the environment, they also saw human mortality as a result of disease increase as well. So we have to have these birds, or else we will feel the effects. Now, even though he's eating all that dead stuff, he's actually one of the cleanest birds we work with. This bird, what people often describe as ugly, his bald face, I think is beautiful, but it serves an important function. Is it easier to clean blood off of your skin or off of your hair? Your skin, right? So if you're eating nasty stuff, you don't want that to soak into your feathers and potentially make you sick. The bald head helps reduce how much grime gets stuck to them as they're eating their stuff. Now the other thing they do to keep themselves clean, which creeps a lot of people out, but it was what he was doing a second ago, where he was sitting there with his wings open on the perch, we'll see if he'll do it here in a second as well, is that they will actually sun themselves. They make their feathers so hot that they actually cook bacteria off of their wings, which is really cool. Now, my other amazing thing is they have built-in hand sanitizer too. They poop on their legs for two different reasons. One, it helps to cool them off. If you're making yourself really hot, you have to have a way to cool down. And birds don't sweat like we do, so he poops on his legs for evaporative cooling, and it also washes away any of the bacteria left over on his feet as built-in hand sanitizer. Pretty cool, huh? Do you guys have any questions about Mr. Sashimi here? Yeah.
Well, you said that in India, 90% of the vultures died out. What happened there?
So in India, the reason the vultures died out, and it's different in different parts of the world. India, it had to do with pharmaceuticals used on cattle, and so they're very sensitive to different toxins. As we were talking about with DDT, the peregrines. The number one reason for vulture decline in the United States, the reason California condors are critically endangered, is lead poisoning. There's chemical involved, right? Now, worldwide, I can't remember the total number of vultures, it's either 21 or 23, but like 17 or 18 of them across the world are threatened or endangered for a variety of reasons. Some of it's chemicals, some of it is intentional poisoning, intentional killings, because people don't understand these birds. So that's why we love to bring vultures out to this, to really help people understand how cool these guys are, and that they're not intentionally killing your cow. Your cow's probably already gone by the time you get there. Yeah, kiddo? So he's molting. He has a couple new feathers coming in, so that's why his tail looks a little funky. He's just molting in new feathers. So sometimes when they come from rehabs, their tails will get broken in transport. It's usually before they even make it to the rehab too. So he had some busted feathers before he came to us. And he's only 1 year old, and birds molt once a year. So this is his first molt with us, and then soon he'll have a perfect tail. All right. How many of you guys learned at least one new thing about birds you didn't know before coming in today? Awesome. Here's what we're going to do for just a few minutes. We are a nonprofit, so if you guys enjoyed this show, we do have a donations box right here. Will is going to hang out here with sashimi for a few minutes. Any $1, $5, $10 that goes into this box helps us to care for over 50 raptors back home in Colorado. We also have our symbolic adoptions that are flying all over our table over there. They're $20 supporting a month of food, vet care, and toys. But if you guys want to come up, get a closer look at Sashimi, take pictures of him or take pictures with him, Will is going to hang out here for just a few minutes so you guys can come up and meet him really close. So thank you guys so much for coming to our first show of the day, and the Carillon Bells will be on soon.